Well, my job here is to talk about a very dry subject, but hopefully a very important one, which is the instruments that can be available to make to give us opportunities to improve. And I'm going to concentrate at the end of my presentation on ways in which we can the new standards that have arrived. I shall describe them first, and then we'll talk about the opportunities. Okay, so let me move forward to the next presentation. Next slide. So first of all, for anybody who does not know, I want to introduce the basis of the UNICEFACT organization, which is a working party within the UNECE trade division. But it's a rather different one to many. It is, first of all, it is global. It has a global remit. It is the UN Center for Trade Facilitation and E-Business. And it is also a private-public organization in the sense that we have experts that join us and work with us and contribute to our work from trade, transport, and indeed government as well. And it's really important that in order to come up with solutions that can work for international trade, transport corridors and single window exchanges, that we have both sides, the supply chain side on the business to business and the government side, and we work together to support regulations and conventions, but at the same time to facilitate automated exchange of data electronically. I join you, Alexander, to think that we will one day possibly get to a paperless environment, but I do not see it happening in my lifetime, unfortunately, having been involved for 30 years. But I am going to introduce some of the new standards work that I think will really help us to move forward. We are very proud of the collaborations that we have within UNTTC, obviously with the UN organizations. We have the UNECE, both trade and transport divisions, but also we have, as you can see here, a wide range of UN agencies and regional commissions that we work closely with. And we also have the regional work with the EEC and with the EU, and we will have some presentations later from our EU colleagues, which will be very interesting, and they are representing from DG Move and DG Taxud. And then we also have the fact that we are very proud to work with international organizations. So we have these international initiatives, and the ICC WTO one is a particularly important one at the moment. And there we also work with FIATA, with DCSA and many others. And so you can see that we have these all these different collaborative platforms which we work with. And we, over the last 20-30 years, those who've followed our work will know that we've been building a very holistic set of reference semantic data models which cover the international supply chain. And we take a very holistic approach. We consider the trade, sales order, a sales contract, and the transport contracts under international conventions, and we think about how they link together. And the single window work of UNICEFACT, the recommendations on single window, and the implementation of single window trace and track, all of these things are our contribution, and we like to think of ourselves as offering a foundation semantic hub and set of recommendations and standards to help all the key pilot projects that we're going to be talking about later on in this session, in this seminar. I'm going to introduce the UNTTC Transport and Trade Connectivity in the Age of Pandemics. This was a COVID-19 response from the UN Development Agency, and all of the UN agencies and commissions, regional commissions, were invited to contribute to encouraging digitized electronic data exchanges rather than paper. And in the terms of COVID, this was to avoid human interactions. We from UNICEFACT and UNECE, we contributed from the trade division. We contributed, we took the opportunity to look at the different modes of transport from the operational data perspective, to look at harmonization of the data using our multimodal reference data model as a base, and to compare the different usages. And I will talk a little bit later about work that we can do afterwards to actually use the work for implementation and also to encourage further harmonization across modes. We ran it as a UNCFAT project, which was very well supported, and we dealt with the aspects of air freight, road freight, sea freight, rail, and inland waterway. And each of these modes, we built teams of experts who weren't just involved in those modes, but also included people who were experts in looking at the wider range of cross-modal. And those teams worked in these different areas. There's been started a lot of work, which we've been doing now for 2 years, which is looking at not only between data exchange between modes, but in the case of rail, it's really important that we can actually think about the different regulations of rail and how the CIM and the SGMS can work together. And this is a way of enabling data exchange across the different conventions within and regulations within the rail industry, but also to think about how the operational data goes to other modes as well. So that was an interesting part of the project, which has continued right up until today, but Mario will talk a little bit more about how that's going. Then we went to maritime and we created the Ocean Bill of Lading. And this is work that we worked on at the same time as the FIATA work was going on. I don't mention that as a mode specific part of the UNTTC, but it was a very important part because it enabled us to look at the multimodal freight house bill of lading of FIATA and bring that into the project as well, as I will show you later. This is just an example of how we mapped and how we looked at the different data that was needed to support the individual modal bills of lading, but we did not cover anything to do with commercial. So we just took the operational data from transport contracts and we aligned those with the reference data model and compared them. You see the road rate, the ECMR model, which had already been published by UNICEFACT, but we brought that into this project as well and compared it with the other modes. And you can see how we mapped from the paper requirements to the electronic, and then we compared it with the MMT. Air freight came in reasonably towards it was the end of the first year, and here we looked at 3 different data exchanges in air. One of them was the airway bill, just looking at the operational aspects of it and how you move data from air to road and all these different modal changes of cargo. And then we had the dangerous goods declaration, which is another important area that led us to also compare the dangerous goods, which will have different regulations in different modes, and to look at that data and see how that could be harmonized to minimize problems when cargo moves from one mode to another, to make sure that the safety is ensured as far as dangerous goods is concerned. So then the last one was the security declaration, which we looked at, and we mapped to MMT as well. And that's an interesting exercise that might be taken up by other modes as well, but it's basically protecting the security of the cargo and declaring it. Okay, so then as a result of all of this, because of the tooling that we're able to use, we can auto-generate data matrices such as the one you see on the screen. This is just a snapshot. But what you can see at the top there is that we have the different documents, the transport contract documents that we worked with. And each of these in the column below shows which data is used, and it's a very interesting matrix because it gives us a start for further harmonization. If we see that there's a cross in one place and a cross in another, in all the other transport contracts, we can perhaps harmonize better to the data. And this is the future work that we could do from a standards perspective. But I would like to, so just to remind everybody, and I did a presentation at the last, I told you a lot more about our reference data models, and there's lots of information available if anyone would like to find out more. What we're talking about this morning is the transport view on the global supply chain buy, ship, pay. reference data model, and this deals with transport contracts and operations. This is what we are mapping to. But I'd like to just talk to you this morning about having done this work and published. The results are published both on the UNCFACT website, and there are links from the UNCFACT website to the UNTTC website, so that the results are available on both websites. But what can we do with this now? I mean, standards always seem a bit dry. Yes, we have standards, but how can they help? And that's what we're talking about in this seminar, this 12th seminar. I've just mentioned that I think that just by the analysis that we've done and the comparison matrices like the one I showed you, and we have one for dangerous goods as well, which is very interesting, they give us an opportunity to think about how operational data can be exchanged more efficiently and more safely between the actors in different modes, and follow the cargo through corridors. So that's something that we can do on the standard side, and that work will continue, I believe, between the UNECE Trade Division and some of the pilot projects that it can help us to run, but also within UNCFACT itself, there are opportunities for further work. Secondly, we have for many years talked about the digitalization of data exchanges, and we haven't got there yet. We've still got a lot of paper. Now, one of the reasons for that is because there's the challenge of the accompanying documents, and I think the earlier presentations have mentioned that already. You know, when the police want to stop a truck and they want to be handed the paper documents that support what they need to know about what cargo is on the truck, for example. How do we do that through digitalization? It's very tricky. It's difficult. It hasn't. We've done a lot of work on supporting system-to-system data exchanges to support international trade, but the accompanying documents is still a challenge. And what we're looking at here is whether QR codes can help, whether we can use APIs to be able to enable access through links such as the JSON resource links to other data that is hosted somewhere else, so that the data can be brought down to a mobile telephone, for example. And we also need to think again about data authentication. For example, if we're talking about corridors, we're talking about borders, we're talking about the export, the import and transit borders. There are times when goods need to be inspected, goods need to be authenticated, and working on SBS and particularly e-CITES that I'm working on at the moment in my working life, there are needs for customs officers to check the cargo and to validate what the cargo is that's passing through their border. That is something that at the moment is done on the basis of the paper documents. So how can this be done, and how can the authentication of multiple signatures along a corridor be supported in a digitalized world? This is something that we need to now move on to testing through pilots and to work on the possibilities of the new authentication, verifiable credentials and similar new technologies to see what can help. Then thirdly, the pilot projects that we could now see running, and this is where I think I link to what Mr. Fedorov was mentioning and what the question was about, was that our standards could support interoperable data exchange for pilot projects to enable cargo to move through the different modes, and perhaps that could be very helpful in the situation that Ukraine finds itself today. This will be covered by other presentations today, this morning in this session, but I'd just like to support that we can provide semantic structures that are interoperable. We can provide data exchange structures of those semantics which are interoperable, and we offer more than 200 international code sets which increase the interoperability. So we're there, we're ready to help with our standards, that's brought you up to date where we are at the moment, and Mario will provide more information in the next presentation. Thank you again for the invitation.